Do you think we should turn the lights off? Set the spooky scene for this mystery I have
Sure.
researched?
Yeah.
Probably won't be able to see you at all.
Podcasting in the dark.
Yeah. Podcasting after dark. This is Koiktania
In a basement.
after dark.
Yeah, in the basement.
Welcome back to Koiktania of Everything. I decided against turning the light off, but we'll see how we go.
Yeah.
I thought maybe this week we could do something completely out of the blue for us and maybe skip the pleasantries.
The pleasantries.
Skip the, how have you been? What have you been playing? What have you been watching?
I've been great, actually, thanks.
No, it's been good. But what are you drinking? That's one that we have
Hot
to, that's
chocolate.
a staple.
Hot chocolate. I'm drinking a hot chocolate.
Nice.
There you go.
I got a whiskey. Got the Ardmore whiskey I tried last time. Really good. Thank you, Monique. Also, off the back of our last episode where we talked about different collections we had, we did talk a little bit about Stephen King. And we did put it out and kind of asked you guys listening, what your favorite Stephen King story or movie is.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
We only got a few replies. Jessie.kyp replied The Long Walk was her favorite. And I think that's a shorter story or novella from Stephen King that hasn't been made into a movie as of yet. But I might need to check it out.
Those are hard to come by, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah, nowadays. And then Bonkina replied Misery was her favorite. And I don't know much about Misery, but it's a book made into a movie. I think came out in the 80s or 90s. And it's about, I think, a lady going crazy and killing someone. That's my extent. The extent of my knowledge. I'm probably very wrong. But it came up real cheap on iTunes this week. So I bought it. So I might watch it. And then my sister Shemaya said Chinga was her favorite, which is that X-Files episode I mentioned. So,
is that a book?
Nah, I guess just a story. He wrote the script.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, thanks for reaching out, guys. We might need to do more little questionnaires like that. But yeah, this week it's been a while since we touched on a bit of a mystery or a cryptid, and it was my turn to dig deep and research something.
Yeah.
I've gone quite left field from what we've been doing, just cryptids and stories from New Zealand. This is something a bit wider than that, and it's something that I guess I knew a little bit about, but I didn't really know heaps about before researching it, and it's kind of like, it's pretty crazy. So I'm looking forward to what you...
I know nothing about this. You mentioned the name accidentally earlier this week to me, and I still didn't give me any clue or inclination of what this is.
Perfect.
I feel like in my head I'm prepared for not a monster, but I don't know. I don't know why. I'm thinking it's something more obscure than that.
It's not a monster. It's more of a mystery or even a conspiracy.
Oh.
Something we probably do have to say about this episode as well, which we haven't had to say before, is we might have to put a bit of a content warning.
Oh.
I guess before it, because some of the stuff that it does touch on or goes into, it does go into a bit of sexual abuse. We might mention a bit of that. We also might mention it might touch on suicide. Nothing too crazy, but it just comes up a little bit, and it might be something we discuss.
Okay.
And of course, this probably sounds super strange because you don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah. But, okay, here we go. So, Hamish.
Yeah.
I'm gonna like take you back, set a scene. Imagine, if you will, that the year is 1981. You live in Portland, Oregon, and you're listening to Queen and David Bowie's latest collaboration, Under Pressure, on your Walkman.
So what's different other than I'm not listening to that currently?
Yeah, well, I guess it's 1981.
Yeah.
You're an
It
Oregon.
is 1981. No.
Oh, what?
No,
You've gone back already.
I'm jumping
okay,
right
I
in.
won't break it. Yeah.
I've never, I was born in the 90s, so I don't know what the heck.
What's a Walkman?
Well, I know what a Walkman is,
Yeah.
but I can't imagine the 80s other than what I've seen in television, so.
Yeah.
But I'll do my best.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, you're just chilling out after school, and you're spending all your free time at a pretty dodgy arcade called Coin Kingdom.
That's probably where I would be.
Yeah, I know, right? It's our type of scene. You spot all your usual favorite arcade cabinets there, but then you notice a new machine. One completely black in color with a joystick and a single white button.
Is it called Tron?
It's not Tron. Not too far off. Yeah, there might be some connections, but the game's logo is written in bright green lettering and it spells out Polybius.
Polybius.
So that's
not
the
as
mystery.
Catchy as Tron.
Tron. Polybius, yeah, it is a bit of a strange word. It does actually mean something, which we'll go into a bit later, but yeah, I've chosen.
You've got like
Polybius.
6 pages to go through, don't you?
I have done some research. I don't know how much of it we'll use.
Okay, so I might need to cut back on the commentary a little bit.
No, honestly, let's just. This has really intrigued me learning about it. So anything that intrigues you, I kind of want to talk about it. So
okay.
Let's just go slow. But yeah, the mystery chosen is Polybius, and it's an arcade game that popped up in Oregon in the early 80s that is said to have produced intense, psychoactive, and addictive effects on all of its players. Now, have you really not heard about this before?
Is it Pac-Man? It's the same thing Pac-Man does, isn't it?
Psychoactive effects. And yeah, man, Pac-Man was crazy back in the day.
Like any video game.
Yeah, right?
But I've never heard of this. I've never heard of this.
Cool. Awesome. I'm looking forward to this.
I feel like the concept of a cursed video game has been done.
Yeah, I mean, we've had Slender Man in our generation and things like that, right?
Yeah.
Like crazy urban legends. But isn't
that also how, with the new like Jumanji movies, isn't that also what they did? Or
cursed video game that brings them into the game?
And then, I was thinking also of Wreck-It Ralph. I think I'm mixing up stuff.
It's quite different to Wreck-It Ralph, but just a crazy arcade game that popped up out of nowhere that just caused so many strange effects on whoever played it.
Yeah.
And I guess I've kind of cut this down into a few sections. So we're going to go spend some time in the 80s, then we're going to jump forward to the 90s and early 2000s, and then we're going to go over some theories some people have for this.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, sit back and relax, because I'm going to tell you about this small Portland arcade called Coin Kingdom. And this is where the first stories of Polybius come from, the 80s and this arcade. And apparently it just appeared out of the blue one day. And shortly after it did, kids playing it started to become nauseous, stressed out, and even received horrific nightmares.
What's the game about?
So apparently it's just contains fast-moving shapes, lines, and colors. No one really knows what the gameplay was specifically like or what the objective was.
Yeah.
But just for the time, I guess, I mean, you mentioned before the Pac-Man, Asteroids, those were the type of games.
Yeah.
And something like what people describe Polybius of being just fast-moving shapes, flashes. It's very, very different to what was around at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, apparently it caused people to have seizures, caused people to attempt suicide, and seemingly people just lost control of their own thoughts after playing this game.
So it might be like almost like hypnotic.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it's described as, having some kind of hypnotic or mind control.
So that is the theories that I shouldn't be talking about those yet, but I can already think that is it some kind of conspiracy about them testing out hypnotic things on people?
Yeah, and
effects.
The government does come into play. So
I will say that I'm like not being an expert on it, but I'm pretty sure that just flashing lights and fast moving things and stuff can give people what's it called?
Exactly, seizures, right?
Seizures, yeah. It can give
epilepsy is a real
so that doesn't surprise me, but the rest of it does.
Yeah, totally. And it gets, I mean, the same time around Coin Kingdom, while kids started experiencing this, apparently men dressed in black suits would show up every few days. And
maybe I have heard of this. Maybe you've mentioned
Maybe I have before. I'd be surprised if you hadn't. But yeah, men in black suits apparently showed up every few days and would check this machine.
Yeah.
They wouldn't take any of the money or coins from it, and instead they'd just take down some notes and record data, which is very strange.
High scores, eh?
Yeah, just recording the high scores for competition, But it's very strange because people didn't really... Sure, I guess the person who runs the arcade will probably empty out the money from the machines. People, I guess arcade games would break sometimes, and you have to call them maintenance repairmen in, but every couple days on the same machine.
Yeah.
It's pretty strange.
Yeah.
Men in Black as well.
It seems like an X-File episode.
I know, right? I think that's why I love it so much. It's just so bizarre. And unfortunately, there's no physical proof or physical documentation or photos even or anything about this arcade game, Polybius, being there. But there's a first-hand account from a boy called Bobby Fieldstein.
Yeah.
So Bobby lived in Portland in 1981, and he would frequent Coin Kingdom after school every day. One day, he started to play this new game called Polybius. As he started to play it, he remembers fading in and out of consciousness, and his thoughts started to feel and sound like static, apparently. As it got later that night, he finished and went home, and the strange feeling still lingered in his head. Then suddenly, when he got to his room, he noticed a group of mysterious, dark figures approaching his house. They entered it, and he tried to scream, but he found himself completely paralyzed. Then as they got closer, he blacked out. When he awoke, he found himself somewhere deep underground. He was still paralyzed, and on top of that, his arms and legs were now bound. He started to freak out when a badly mangled boy approached him and freed him from his bonds. Together, the two of them then fled through tunnels while being chased by the same dark-suited figures, and by the time they escaped from the tunnels, the mangled boy had vanished, and Bobby found himself alone inside a deep forest about 60 miles away from Portland. He eventually found his way back home and tried to tell people about what happened to him, but no one believed him. And even now, apparently, Bobby still leads walking tours around Portland and still tries to convince people that something real and horrible happened to him at the Coin Kingdom arcade.
Why hasn't he tried to lead people back into the forest where he came out?
Yeah, and I can't find much information about that. You can't even find much information that corroborates the story. Like, it's just a story.
Does he even know the forest? Like, does he mention the forest name?
No. Apparently it's just 60 miles away from Portland. So it's a pretty crazy story. I mean, it kind of reminds you of all the crazy UFO abduction stories you hear, or even reminds you of something like Stranger Things, like underground.
Yeah.
Underground bunkers with experiments in the middle of nowhere. But shortly after that incident, I think the Polybius was only there a month in total before it vanished without warning, and it was taken away by the same men in black suits, leaving no record of its existence. And that's pretty much all the information, if you would even call it that, we have of Polybius in the 80s, this strange arcade game. Although, doing a bit of reading around, there were a few more documented arcade game incidents around the same time as Bobby's.
Yeah.
So, you see, in the span of a week, 3 children really did fall ill upon playing video games at arcades in the Portland area, the same area. There was Michael Lopez, who suffered a sudden migraine while playing a game called Tempest with some friends. He said, "I began to feel a weird sensation in the back of my head, and my vision started going out, little flashing lights. Suddenly he got sick and stumbled outside, where I threw up all over the parking lot. One of my friends walked me back to my home, but we didn't make it all the way there. My head hurt so bad, it got to where I couldn't even speak. I couldn't walk anymore. Then I collapsed on someone's lawn, 4 blocks from my house, rolling and screaming in pain. Felt like my head was cracking open. Someone called the cops, and that was the first migraine I'd ever had. I've had them off and on since then for my whole life, but it was freaky because I didn't know what was happening at the time."
Yeah.
So it's something else happened around the same time, same area. And we do have these 2 other short ones. There was a gamer called Jeff Daly back in the day who suffered a heart attack and died after getting his name on the high score list of a game called Berserk.
How old was he?
Very young.
Like a kid?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And blame was put on the game's flashing lights and intense visual effects.
Wait, what game was it?
Berserk.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't looked too much into the gameplay of Berserk, but apparently these games, Tempest with Michael Lopez before Berserk with Jeff Daly and Polybius, all shared the same flashing, new kind of gameplay that we haven't seen before. They hadn't seen before at the time. But yeah, he died of a heart attack, and the incident's actually documented in the local paper. You can actually read about this. Something that did happen. Lastly, there was someone called Brian Morrow who, after 28 straight hours of playing Asteroids and drinking Coke, got sick and collapsed.
Well, that...
I know, right? Like, he survived, but it's pretty, like, of course, if you're going to do that for that long.
I do know that also with playing video games, you can tend to, like, the adrenaline, especially if you're going for a high score, like, that's you know, like, if he had already had, like, a pre-existing heart condition, not to say, like, again, like, this is just an assumption of someone who doesn't know much about the medical side of it, but that to me sounds plausible, but I think they would note it. I think, just thinking about it, they probably note it if he did have a pre-existing thing. I mean, I guess it's a chance that they didn't know.
I mean, even drinking, like, you've heard nowadays that you have heaps of energy drinks, it's terrible for you. Like, I think there's even stories of people dying from doing that alone. Yeah. So drinking that much Coke, I guess...
Well, I'm talking about the heart attack one.
Yeah, true.
The sick one, obviously. Playing for that much of time, drinking that much. Yeah, you're just asking to...
Totally.
To get... Because it just said he got sick, right?
Yeah. You just got sick. And I guess it's...
And the migraine one could be a coincidence.
Yeah, totally. Again,
but also
with
flashing lights and stuff can give you...
But you're right, yeah. It'll be interesting to see. Well, I might have to look a bit more into Jeff Daly and see if he did actually have any pre-existing conditions for that heart attack. But I guess it's just very easy to see.
I feel like right now I'm being like Scully in this. I'm just like...
the skeptic of this. It's a very, very loose story.
Very medical, except for I don't know what I'm talking about.
I guess it's just... Obviously, these are three different video games. Not Polybius, as we're going to be talking about. But I guess it's just easy to see how the reporting of such events like this and kids getting sick and even dying of playing too much arcade games it could lead to paranoia about the long-term effects of this new entertainment medium, or just, I guess, arcade games are coming in and people were getting worried, especially with all these stories coming out. And that's pretty much everything we've got from the 80s when Polybius was said to initially have shown up.
Yeah. What about the 90s, though?
And now we're going to go into the 90s. So, jumping forward a bit to 1998, out of the blue, one day on a site called coinop.org, which gathers information on different arcade games, different hardware. I don't know if you know much about, like, ROMs, but...
Sounds familiar.
My dad built an arcade cabinet, and you have to actually, to be able to run arcade games on emulators, you have to get the ROM files.
Oh,
The file type that you need to get. So this is a site that, I guess, gives you information on all of those aspects and where to find the ROMs and so on.
Yeah.
But coinop.org, in 1998, all of a sudden a listing for Polybius appeared.
Do you have the exact date?
I probably could find it, but I've just noted down 1998. But it's just...
Be interested in seeing the exact date.
Yeah.
Just because I'm born in 1998.
It's coincide with your birth, is it? Oh my goodness.
No, just curious. No, nothing.
But out of the blue, a listing for Polybius popped up.
Yeah.
And this is what it says on the site. It still says it. This game had a very limited release, 1 or 2 backwater arcades in the suburb of Portland. The history of this game is cloudy. There were all kinds of strange stories on how kids who played it got amnesia afterwards, couldn't remember their name or where they lived, etc. The bizarre rumors about this game are that it was supposedly developed by some kind of weird military tech offshoot group, used some kind of proprietary behavior modification algorithms developed for the CIA or something. Kids who played it woke up at night screaming, having horrible nightmares afterwards. According to an operator who ran an arcade with one of these games, guys in black coats would come to collect records from the machines. They weren't interested in quarters or anything, they just collected information about how the game was played. The game was weird looking, kind of abstract, fast action with some puzzle elements. The kids who played it stopped playing games entirely afterwards, one of them even becoming a big anti-video game crusader or something. We've contacted one person who met him, and he claims the machines disappeared after a month or so and no one ever heard about them again, until the ROM showed up. Here's what we've found so far. We've found English strings, insert coin, and press one player start, and it looks like a 1 or 2 player game.
Okay.
Text in the game says, copyright 1981 Sinneslotion. Maybe a German company. If anyone has heard any additional information about this game, would appreciate hearing about it. And all that, everything I just said is what's listed on the site, what came up randomly one day in 1998. So I guess it's pretty crazy. And apparently they said they had this ROM, or they've got the ROM and they've found in the ROM, it's 1 player, definitely 1 player, maybe 2, and it's copyrighted 1981 Sinneslotion.
So they got the ROM so they could try it out and play it.
So that's interesting, right? Because you'd think that they would try that, but that's all that it says on the site. The ROM's not listed there. No one's been able to get it from them.
Yeah.
So it's a bit ambiguous. It's a bit hard to believe. But the site as well has a screenshot, apparently, of what they say the starting screen for Polybius looked like. And I've got it here.
Oh.
So
it looks like a fun game.
It looks like a fun game, right? Like nice, clean, green writing, Polybius, 1981 Sinneslotion ink, placed in insert your credits. But again, this is apparently from the ROM that showed up, and it's very strange.
It's actually strange. It's quite a compelling.
Yeah,
but like imagery, like the coloring and everything is quite pleasing.
It is.
Looking at it, like I'm like I actually wouldn't. Like,
I know, right?
I kind of feel like playing it.
I know. And again, it's quite different to like what was out at the time, because games like Pac-Man, I feel, didn't have weren't as like inviting as these colors looked, and maybe a bit more janky.
Even just the font they've used as well.
And that's apparently the Polybius font that's on the machines as well.
Yeah.
So interesting stuff. The person believed to have written this page, that listing, is Kurt Kohler, the owner of coinop.org. And soon after this page was discovered, or soon after he wrote it, he tipped off the world's largest gaming magazine called GamePro to the existence of Polybius and its story.
Yeah.
This led to a GamePro article about Polybius in 2003 called Secrets and Lies, and the story went on to hit Slashdot, which was a social news website and probably like the closest thing to going viral in the early 2000s, on August 21st, 2003.
Okay.
So it's pretty interesting, because I guess that's when it became more of a mainstream mystery or mainstream thing. Game sites, game magazines were writing about it, and this is, I guess, where a lot of the wider public started hearing about it. This is where people started recalling stories or recalling memories of them playing this game or hearing about it, and sharing stories online, like Bobby Fieldstein's, which I just read before. And it was around this time that people, I guess, started to study the name of it, Polybius.
Yeah.
And it's actually the name of a classical Greek historian who was born in Arcadia and who's known for his assertions that historians should never report what they cannot verify through interviews with eyewitnesses.
Huh, okay.
So, interesting that the Polybius word means, hey, you should never report about things that you cannot verify.
Yeah.
When
I feel like that's mainly because he's from, where'd you say? Arcadia.
Arcadia.
Yeah, I think that's probably why.
Yeah. After that CoinOp listing, things start to get very, very interesting.
Yeah.
So in each of the CoinOp's pages for the games, there's a comment section. And in 2006, someone by the name of Stephen Roach added to the story. And this is quite... I don't know if I read out this whole thing because it's pretty long. We'll see how we go. But he added a comment. He says, I think it's about time I laid this to rest. However, entertaining the speculation. My name is Stephen Roach, and I'm primarily based in the Czech Republic.
Okay.
Sinneslotion was a company set up by myself and a few other amateur programmers in 1978 that worked on component parts for printed circuit boards and saw that programming was a limited but very profitable sideline. I think the fact that it wasn't the focal point of our business took the pressure off of us, and hence we created some quality work which quickly gained a reputation within the industry. It's very... this is Jasher, this isn't what it says, but there's a lot of spelling mistakes, there's a lot of errors.
Yeah.
Some things don't really make sense and pretty vague. But then it goes in and says...
They don't speak English there, though, do they? Or do they?
I guess you're probably right, Czech Republic, right?
I don't really know where that is, actually.
Yeah, that might be
exactly.
cause to
I feel like I probably should. It's a country I've...
You hear about it enough, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, any Czech Republic listeners.
No, we're offending
Oh,
another
no.
group now.
Stephen Roach's comment goes on and says, we were approached around 1980 by a Southern American company that shall remain nameless for legal purposes to develop an idea they had for producing an arcade game with a puzzle element that centered around a new approach for video game graphics. They were very keen indeed to gain an upper hand on what was already a very competitive market, so we were offered a staggering commission-based remuneration package to develop something special that utilized the technology. We developed the game in little more than 2 porta cabins that were knocked together, where we spent many stressful mornings, evenings, and nights, which was a great pity because it compromised our relaxed and innocently amateurish approach to our business in spite of the financial possibilities. Marek Vasicek was the programmer who came up with the name Polybius. He had studied Greek mythology at Masaryk University and came up with the name because it sounded bold and mysterious, which is what we wanted, quite simply. The inspired graphics combined with the puzzle elements and scintillating gameplay was something to behold. We playtested it for hours and hours, and it certainly was an addictive game that was well loved professionally and recreationally by all that played it. The company couldn't have been happier, and we thought we were on the verge of something very special indeed. I might actually read the rest of it because it's pretty interesting
quite interesting.
It goes on and says, we then received a phone call stating that there were some concerns within the company that the basic graphics, which feature prominently in so many other games at the time, were fine for the average gamer to spend hours at a time playing without any noticeable physical or mental detriments. But the intense and engrossing gameplay of this new step was very much an unknown quantity. So the game was put back several months due to the divided opinion within our board of directors, much to our consternation for breaking our backs to finish it on time. We received hardening, collated playtesting figures, and then were told the game would receive a temporary limited release, which buoyed us significantly, but shortly after, we received terrible news. A 13-year-old boy from the Lloyd district of Portland, Oregon, had suffered an epileptic fit while playing the game, only 6 days after the machines had literally been installed. One of the senior employees that I knew very well contacted me to tell me that it had caused immense ripples of panic throughout the company, who were of the opinion that they had created a monster. It may sound laughable now, but bear in mind this was 25 years ago when the video game industry was in its infancy. Every effort was made to withdraw the game from the public domain as quickly as possible, but the scaremongering was already out of force, and a lot of the children were queuing up or daring their friends to play this supposedly nightmarish game. Company directors descended on the town to assess the situation, which may account for the reports of the strange men in black suits hanging about, and the machines were often taken in daylight, causing minor but noticeable incidents. As far as I was made aware, only 7 machines were distributed around the area and no other health-related incidents were reported. I heard off the record that the company made a one-off settlement to the boy's family and no more was heard, apart from all the internet-based speculation and resulting paranoia. We disbanded Sinislotion shortly afterwards because we didn't want to restrict ourselves to the stringent deadlines of other companies and favoured distancing ourselves from the game in case any lingering recriminations, which could have done a great deal of damage to our personal and professional reputations, which was our livelihood, as some of us had very young families. This was extremely important to us. As far as I'm aware, no ROMs or otherwise exists unless they remain in the bowels of the company that distributed it. We only received basic payment in view the fact the game was withdrawn without nationwide or international distribution, so we grew to loathe it, and it was often a cursed word whenever we met up, and still is today, which is a shame. I still believe we created something that should have changed the face of gaming, and it would have set us apart from the rest of the industry, but arcade games were often compared to drugs at the time because of their addictiveness, and we created something that small-minded bureaucrats perceived to be the heroine of the video game world. That only crime was that it was made years ahead of its time. I'm sure people will doubt the sincerity of this, so feel free to drop me a line at stephenroach@yahoo.com, as I'm happy to answer any questions, Stephen. That was very long-winded, but...
Yeah, but that was...
a lot of information.
That feels like it explains it all. Though,
right?
Like right there.
And it's just...
But I'm guessing people have an issue with it.
People didn't really have an issue with it. People were like, hey, this accounts for everything, right?
Yeah.
Even if it is crazy that...
that makes sense why they would be going in and checking it and everything, like what you're saying. Like the people going in and running Yeah.
And if it was only a
And also,
one-off
like, if
incident
people,
about the gameplay,
if
I mean,
kids were, like, daring each other to go do it, and they sort of believed it was some kind of cursed game, then they would also, like, they'd be more aware of anything and there probably would be heaps of reports after that of kids being like, oh,
crazy game.
yeah, it made me feel weird when I
Yeah.
played it, because they're expecting to feel weird, or they're expecting
Totally
something.
right. So it makes sense.
Yeah,
But
but
then
I feel like you're going to bring up something
straight
else.
after that,
Yeah.
coinop.org amended its entry of Polybius in 2009. Well, not straight afterwards, but in 2009, they added, quick update. We just wanted to go on the record here and say Stephen Roach is full of himself and knows nothing about the game. We have it on good authority. No, Polybius is not a Tempest prototype. No, Polybius is not a vector game. Does the title screen look vector? No, it does not.
What does that mean? What do you mean by
I guess vector is like, I'm not too sure. Is it like lines?
I don't know.
Like simple lines? I'm not too sure at all, but yeah, they've said, does it look vector? No, it does not. We've recently received some new information about the game. Today's May 16th, 2009. And yes, one of us is flying to the Ukraine area tomorrow. And yes, the trip is related to this information. Stay tuned. Nothing from CoinOp since then.
Huh.
Like, apparently they learned something. They were going to the Ukraine for some reason. And
This is weird, because 2009.
that's
Like,
pretty
this is
recent.
where we're getting into the time where I'm like, I remember 2009. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, like, yeah, just showing my age, like how young I am.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, I don't know. It's like that seems odd that this is something that's been tracking on from
Early
the
80s.
Yeah, and then suddenly that seems weird.
It's weird.
But what's their motive? What would be their motive for lying?
But I don't know.
Because they don't have
Yeah.
anything. They're not selling. Is it like they're not
I
selling
guess they got
anything from it?
very popular. I mean, the story went out to pretty much mainstream. The story
Yeah.
went mainstream. People knew about it. People knew about CoinOp. They had heaps of people drawn to the site.
Yeah, I suppose.
You can kind of see that. You could kind of spin it that it was just a publicity
But why
stunt.
wouldn't they have said it straight away? Why would they wait a few years?
Yeah, and were they the first ones to kind of come out with this information, right?
Yeah.
Like they come out with this information, they supposedly have some information or a ROM of the game,
Yeah.
and then Stephen Roach says, hey, it's not true, and then they say, hey, Stephen Roach is lying.
Yeah, but years later.
Yeah, like, it's crazy. And then,
So it's like either they didn't notice,
yeah,
or if they didn't know about Stephen Roach until then, or it's that they were actually doing their research, and then it wasn't until 2009 that they were like, no.
hey, we're going to
decided-
the Ukraine.
Yeah.
Never hear from them again. That's still the last listing on the Polybius page.
But the website still runs.
Still runs. All that information, you can even see that comment there by Stephen Roach. There's different comments in the comment section of people saying, hey, I've played it. Crazy. I deleted it afterwards because I didn't want anyone else to get their hands on it. Just random things like that, which you can't trust.
Yeah.
I mean, not that you can trust Stephen Roach's, but it is kind of believable.
Yeah.
But then after all this back and forth between Stephen Roach and CoinOp, it was later found out that in November 1998, which is going back a bit,
Yeah.
a man by the name of Stephen Roach and his wife Glenda were arrested in the Czech Republic.
Okay.
So it's quite like, it could just be multiple Stephen Roaches, but it's just Czech Republic where he said he was from.
Yeah.
A man named Stephen Roach and his wife Glenda were arrested when it was discovered that the school in which they operated was illegally imprisoning its students, violating their human rights and torturing them.
What?
There are numerous harrowing accounts of events provided by former detainees on a support network site and from many other schools that Stephen and Glenda Roach operated at across the world. So you can...
But they haven't confirmed that this is the same guy.
Yeah, it's not confirmed. It's something that happened. Crazy, horrible stuff that happened at this school. Someone called Stephen Roach in the Czech Republic.
Yeah.
Years later, a new Stephen Roach comes out and talks about a game that was it's kind of been linked to having strange effects on children.
Yeah.
And it's completely like, it's just people just coming up with theories.
It seems like a weird coincidence, though.
It's a weird coincidence. In the Czech Republic, like...
Yeah. The same country, same name. And a very similar
kind of like you can see the ties.
Yeah.
And again, that's where all this information pretty much comes to a halt. We don't have any proper evidence still, except stories and hearsay.
Yeah.
But I do have a few common theories that people believe.
Oh, yep.
This is probably going to be, we're wrapping up, guys, but the first theory is that Stephen Roach was telling the truth.
Yeah.
Which is believable, right? He was part of a group that made a video game, and the graphics just had unexpected effects on people, and they took it away.
I feel like that's the theory I'm leaning towards.
But then why wouldn't we find a cabinet somewhere, or why wouldn't we find the ROM somewhere? Like,
yeah. Well, that's because they just destroyed it.
Yeah. I guess there is like lost pieces of media and movies even, just that they were destroyed back in the day without second thought about it.
Yeah.
So it is kind of believable.
So it's possible.
Yeah. The second theory is a bit of a scary one. It's around a very real documented government project called MK Ultra. And have you heard of this? Because it's something that I had heard about as well, but only a little bit about. So it was pretty crazy reading about it. So MK Ultra was the code name given to a program of absolutely terrible experiments on human subjects that were designed and undertaken by the CIA, some of which were highly illegal.
Okay.
And a lot of what they did in MK Ultra has been declassified since. And it's something that actually happened. Like, this is a real thing. And the operation was officially sanctioned in 1953.
Okay.
But then was officially halted in 1973. So, long before Polybius was even around in the 80s. But some of the things the program experimented on are eerily similar.
Yeah.
MK Ultra used US and Canadian citizens as its unwitting test subjects and used numerous methods to manipulate their mental states and brain functions. Techniques included the covert administration of high doses of psychoactive drugs like LSD and other chemicals, electroshock therapy, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, isolation, and verbal and sexual abuse, in addition to other forms of torture. So it's pretty crazy to think this has actually happened on people.
Yeah.
It was very broad, the scope of MK Ultra, with activities carried out under the guise of research at more than 60 institutions, including colleges and universities, hospitals, prisons, pharmacies even. And the CIA operated using front organizations. So although some top officials at these institutions were aware of the CIA's involvement, a lot of people working there didn't even know what they were doing.
Yeah.
And again, this is very real, very horrendous. The government was using unwilling people to test all manner of mind-altering substances and ordeals in order to weaken individuals and force confessions through brainwashing and psychological torture. Most commonly experimented on were mental patients, prisoners, drug addicts, homeless people, and sex workers. So people who could not fight back, as one agency officer put it. And yeah, you can read a lot of these documents, although I probably would advise against it. You can see a list of exactly what they actually tested on.
Yeah.
And not great stuff to read, although a lot of people think that Polybius could have been a part of it. Maybe these experiments secretly continued on past the 70s. Maybe the government were trying to test the effects on some new video game technology on unsuspecting children.
Yeah.
Who knows? Like, it's kind of cliche to say that the government's up to something nowadays. Let's put our tinfoil hats on, but I guess, and I'm not one of the people that's constantly thinking that and thinking about crazy conspiracies, but this is something that happened.
Yeah, yeah.
And
it's I don't know.
I mean, there's also, I guess, completely unconnected, but we know, but yeah, I mean, it's historically documented that the US got ex-Nazi scientists over to try and help them with things over here.
We talked about that in X-Files.
Yeah, so it's...
I didn't actually think that was real. I thought it was
No, it's actually another declassified thing that happened. So it's...
Huh. That's weird.
I guess all this crazy stuff going on with the governments, people, I guess, learning about it, and then you can see how this could kind of be tied or could kind of... I don't know, maybe were the governments putting arcade machines around the place to try and test things? Bit of a jump, but...
Well, yes. Well, yes, and also, like, if they did, why on earth would this person come out and say...
Cover-up story, right?
Yeah, but why would they get someone with that history?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally, right?
Why wouldn't they come up with a better one? Why wouldn't they come up with at least one that spells everything correctly?
Yeah.
I don't know.
One that can't be tied
or maybe
back.
that's the genius behind it.
Yeah.
Maybe they're making it flawed so that it seems more obvious that it's like, it's obviously that because
I'm just going to quickly
if
type
it was
that
a
in and
cover up,
check it.
because if it was a cover up, they would make it perfect. So maybe,
There you go. Maybe
Who
you're not
knows?
Scully anymore, are you? I got a couple more theories. The third theory is that some people believe that the story of Polybius is simply just caused by the Mandela effect.
yeah.
So this
Yeah,
is
I've
when
heard
I
of
guess
that.
people remember history a different way, even though it's not how it actually happened.
Yeah.
And some people think that people are just remembering another mystery around the same time called the Publius Enigma. Now, we don't have time to go into what this was, but it's
I feel
just
like this should be another episode.
be another episode, right? But there was a Pink Floyd themed puzzle,
Yeah.
or a hoax that some people think of a puzzle, that circulated around online in the 80s and 90s that became pretty popular. So popular, in fact, that its name was inexplicably displayed during one of Pink Floyd's concerts. Like, I think it was that random messages, cryptic messages were popping up online about there's a hidden meaning in the Publius Enigma and Pink Floyd, and then Pink Floyd had a blimp that would flash things, and then during their concerts it flashed like hidden messages.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much like, it doesn't make any sense, the whole puzzle. It hasn't been solved, but some people just subscribe to the idea that people get Polybius mixed up with Publius, and they're probably just recounting a strange puzzle and getting it completely mixed up.
Yeah.
They remember this Publius thing happening, or might have been Polybius. People are saying this story happened, might be that.
But I mean, they do seem kind of different.
Yeah,
Just from.
I mean, one of them's arcade games and crazy psychoactive drugs or effects, and the other's a flying blimp. But
The other one's just like a weird conspiracy about hidden
Pink
messages.
Floyd. Yeah.
And
Yeah. So I don't think people are stupid enough to get those mixed up. Like, it's very different.
Yeah.
But this is now on to the last theory, and I think this is one I probably believe the most.
Yeah.
And I think this is probably what a lot of people believe now when it comes to Polybius. People think that Polybius never existed, and that people are just mixing up a whole lot of random things that happened in the 80s.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about the real stories already of kids falling sick, and even dying after playing arcade games.
Yeah.
And people were genuinely getting suspicious of the government and Men in Black around that same time.
Yeah.
Crazy things were coming to light, especially things like MK Ultra. And I guess the public would have been freaking out a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And you know what's crazy is that the FBI have actually revealed now that they actually were conducting top secret experiments out of different arcades across America.
Okay.
So the Bureau's records indicate that the agency actually was monitoring and subsequently raiding arcades in Portland right around the same time that the stories of players playing Polybius hit the mainstream media. And in those days, arcades were naturally dark and maze-like and had kind of seedy reputations as hotbeds of gambling, drug activity, pickpockets, people coming to prey on teenagers, that kind of thing. And there's documented cases of the FBI rigging arcade cabinets with cameras and microphones.
Yeah.
And this FBI's program was so extensive across America that it actually caused a shortage of certain games and cabinets like Tempest, which we've mentioned a few times.
Yeah.
So imagine, if you will, go back to what I took you to at the start.
Yeah.
You were in Portland, 1981. You hear stories about friends, different people getting headaches, falling dizzy after playing video games, and you yourself have seen Men in Black or FBI agents popping up, tampering with machines every couple of days, tampering with different cabinets. And heck, I wouldn't put it past you. I wouldn't put it past anyone really to think all those things were connected.
Yeah.
And then when you hear about Polybius years later online, you're like, flip, I remember that.
Yeah.
Or I remember things like that happening.
Yeah.
So that's what a lot of people believe nowadays.
Yeah.
That it wasn't really a thing. Although it doesn't explain the random Stephen Roach messages or coin-op.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people just think's a sham, publicity stunt.
It could be,
trying to...
but then at the same time, the whole thing of the FBI agents going in and stuff, that seems like a bit of a cover-up.
Yeah,
like, hey guys, we're just doing it because we're wanting to...
We just want to keep you guys safe.
We're wanting to, to see how bad these places are, and monitor. Like that to me seems a bit like, like they're just trying to cover it up. And they're just like, we send our agents in sometimes just to keep you guys safe, and it's like, I don't know. That to me kind of feels like a confession almost, like they're admitting that they were there.
Yeah. Oh, flip! The people are learning that something crazy was going on in Portland. Let's say we're doing this other thing.
Yeah.
But
still, it seems a bit like that they admit that they were there at the time. They admit that they were at the same, like, city.
Yeah.
And like then all this other stuff going on. That to me just seems like it's even more added on to the. I think I'm going more and more.
Have we switched places?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess those are the two most believed theories, that either it's just a whole lot of different things that actually happened that people are thinking is connected to this crazy arcade game, or it was a real arcade game that briefly showed up and was recalled after it had some unforeseen events, unforeseen effects on kids. But that's it. That's Polybius. No real, I guess, proof, no real documented evidence, but a few reasonable explanations where this crazy urban legend may have originated from.
Yeah.
And it has become more mainstream. Like, I don't know if you saw it, but in Loki, the Polybius arcade cabinet showed up in one of the episodes behind them. Yeah. I think when they got pruned and he was meeting all the other Lokis, you can see an arcade cabinet.
Yeah.
But I guess with all the crazy panic back in the 80s, we know that Dungeons and Dragons had the crazy panic around it as well.
Yeah.
Video games. I guess nowadays it still probably even exists with hyper-violent games. You hear people saying, "Oh, Grand Theft Auto is making people go crazy." And I guess even microtransactions nowadays.
Yeah.
Hey, big corporations are almost mind-controlling kids, getting them to buy that next loot box. Nowadays, they don't even need Polybius, right? Like, it's the same kind of themes and things we've always dealt with around new technology or games, and
I can see that.
Interesting to see it actually all come together in this crazy story of Polybius.
Now, here's the question though for you.
Yeah.
If it was real, assuming that it is real.
Yeah.
Like if it is, and you were able to get it and download it, would you play it?
I think I would.
I think I don't know if I'd play it. I feel like I don't know if I would play it, but I would definitely watch someone play it. Like I think I would if you got it, I would definitely come around and see what it's like.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I'd actually play it myself. I don't know. I'm a bit of like a, what do you call it? Not paranoid, but like like if something is told to me that like, oh, this I don't know, there's if there's like a spiritual side to something, or there's just like this kind of side to something. I don't know what to call this. It's like psychological.
Yeah,
sort of thing.
Right.
I'm very cautious about it. Like even if I'm like not 100% sold on it, or I'm like, no, it's fine.
It is weird, right?
I still feel like I'm like, ooh, As soon as someone says like, oh, that thing's cursed or something, I'm like, oh, I might not believe it in the sense that they're saying, but I still feel like I don't want to, like, I don't know, it's like if someone brought like the, was it the doll from Annabelle?
Annabelle, yeah.
If they brought like the one that the prop they used for the movie. I probably wouldn't touch it. I wouldn't go near it. I'd be like, nah.
It's crazy about this story.
I feel like there's a lot of people who wouldn't do that. But
yeah.
But like, still, it's like,
even reading up about this, it's crazy how it's just like an arcade machine that apparently at most made people gave them headaches or made them experience loss of time and stuff.
Yeah.
It's crazy how it kind of gives off that weird, strange, unsettling feeling.
Yeah.
Is almost akin to like the spiritual and like different crazy dark stories, which is interesting. But I find it very intriguing. Yeah. And especially because I'm a sucker. I guess we've talked about X-Files too much on the show and stuff like that. So it's very much in the vein of that. But yeah, Polybius.
Yeah. Well, I reckon just for everyone, I'd be interested in seeing how many people would say that they would want to play it. So, like for anyone listening, if you wanted to, like, I guess we'll probably put out the when we put out the episode, we'll have an Instagram.
Yeah.
Post or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be amazing to see. Sort of like,
would you play this
yeah,
game?
I'd be really interested in seeing if you just leave it in the comments and stuff.
Yeah.
When you play this game.
And also, I'll probably check up on our Discord and probably just the show notes, just links to the Coinop page where you can see and read more of these comments. Maybe a little bit about MK Ultra, which we didn't touch on much. Who knows? We might do the Publius Enigma or something else later down the track. I do like stories like this, just weird puzzles and weird conspiracies. Bit of a change up from the Mohel Man and the Canterbury Cats, but yeah. I think coming up soon as well, we've got our first guest to the show with another mystery. So it might not be next episode, but it might be the episode after. It might be next episode. So stay tuned. You might get a back-to-back mystery.
Ah, sweet.
But yeah, thank you so much for listening, guys. As always, would really appreciate it if you rate the show, and just tell people about us. It's real cool. Thank you everyone who has jumped on board and have been listening.
Yeah.
And
sweet.
Until next time.
Stay safe.
Yeah. Don't play any dodgy video games.
Yeah. Keep away from those.
Sommerfeestje. Zij de laks in de wanneer ik doe je net. Smelk, ze willen. Hang je wel af. Je naast